You're listening to the You Got Jobbed podcast. This is episode 16. Hi, welcome to the You Got Jobbed podcast. This is Suzanne Yeagley, and I'm here today with
Dave Norman. Thank you for having me.
Thanks for being on. So Dave has a storied past, and I guess why don't I we can start with the McSweeney's interview. Why did I interview you? What was that job about?
Yeah, how desperate were you in that moment to reach out to a paintball journalist of all the crazy things?
Well, I have never heard of it before or since, so I think it was a good choice.
I'm certainly grateful for it. There aren't too many around anymore, though there are some wonderful people doing good work out on blogs and whatnot.
Yeah. So how old were you when you started playing paintball?
I started when I was 15 years old. My church youth group actually took a bunch of us out because our youth pastor couldn't think of any more appropriate thing to do with a gaggle of teenagers than drag them out in the woods and shoot at them with bath beads. And we thought it was great, so we went along.
And was it like, did you take to it immediately?
I really did. It was fantastic. I'd always liked getting dirty in the woods, playing out in the woods. I was never really one for team sports. And here I found that I could go off and kind of do my own thing, combining my interests with, running around in the woods and rolling through creeks and sneaking up on my friends and all of that into a competitive means. And I had always been a lifelong target shooter. So I was like, I've got a really good eye and pretty decent natural aim. So what if I apply that to basically capture the flag? Instead of just playing, cowboys and Indians or cops and robbers with, pointing sticks at friends, what if I can actually shoot at them with bath beads and they can shoot at me with bath beads? And we'll see who really got the other one.
And what's it like? I've never done paintball. So are there teams and how does it work?
Yeah, there usually are. It's a really amazing sport that starts out basically as capture the flag with as many or as few friends as you can get together to go out to a paintball field. And they'll take you through all of the safety indoctrination, all the briefings about the goggles that you wear and when to put them on and the few times it's ever okay to take them off and all of that. Once you get past the necessary safety, then you get out in the woods with usually color-coded armbands or some other means of identifying us versus them. And they'll put you on opposite ends of a wooded field or a big inflatable open field. And when they yell go, you try to get a flag either from their end of the field back to your own end. Or sometimes they'll put a flag in the very middle. And you compete for the flag, and then you have to carry it to the far end. And so along the way, when you see somebody.
Yeah. No, I was just, how do are you just like, you're shooting each other the whole time? If you get shot, are you out, or is it just...
Yeah, but only for that game, which is crucial. You can play 2 or 3 games an hour, sometimes more. So it's not like you're out for the entire day. But games last anywhere from a couple of minutes to maybe 20, 30 minutes. It all depends on the format and number of people playing. But once you get hit one time anywhere, you put your paintball marker over your head, put your hand on your head too if you like, and yell, "I'm out," and run away. Because otherwise someone who's bored is going to be like, "Hey, there's an easy target."
Nice. And so you were in high school. Oh, go ahead. Were you going to say more about it? I'm interested, so go ahead.
I can talk for hours about it, but if I was going to add one other interesting kind of angle to that is the amazing creativity that people can bring to the sport. And this is where its popularity really got going when it was a big thing in the 90s and the early 2000s. So you can adapt it from playing capture the flag with your friends to playing space cowboys and aliens, or even I covered a world record game in Oklahoma that had pushing 5,000 players doing a scaled down reenactment of the invasion of Normandy, complete with landing craft that they towed across a farmer's pond on a really cool, like tractor-powered system. So that when, the loading door in the front of the pontoon boat went down, he had 30 people suddenly on a beach facing a hillside of people who are recreating the Axis forces of World War II. And suddenly there's just this hail of paintballs coming down on these poor people running off of a pontoon boat. And they're like, whoa, what is this? Times, 6,000 people. They were competing for bridges, they had tanks, they had all kinds of really cool things going on. And there was such an amazing social world that went on when the games were over and the days leading up to the games, for this week-long special event. That was really quite a sight to behold. So for people who, just play paintball occasionally, you can go out and have some fun with your friends on a Saturday. And if you want to get totally crazy about it, you can go do a scaled-down reenactment of World War II.
What was your participation in that? Were you there covering it as a journalist, or were you participating? What were you doing there?
It evolved. I started out as a participant, just playing the weekend games. For that particular game, I came my first year as a participant and journalist. So I'd play in the days leading up to the big game. And then during the big game itself, I just suit up with my blaze orange, please don't keep shooting me vest, take out my really expensive camera and go hope for the best and take lots of pictures. And I'd use those photos for, months and months afterwards, a whole bunch of different articles. So that gave me a literal bird's eye view of the action when I took to the air. One year they had ultralight aircraft that I flew around in. Another year they had helicopter rides. So I get out over the field and see all of these smoke canisters popping and people just crawling all over the place and hear the din of that many people shooting and yelling and laughing and cheering. It was amazing.
So they were laughing? It wasn't, yeah.
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 You can't have that many people in one place getting all crazy with paintball guns without lots of good humor.
Oh my God.
So.
I'm sorry. I have to ask you this question just to get it out of my brain. My friend Dave, who maybe might listen to this podcast, I don't know, I haven't seen him in a while, but
hello, fellow Dave.
Yeah. Hey, Dave.
And all other Daves.
Yeah. Although he's not going to be happy that I'm telling this story properly. But one time we used to live in Oregon in this small town, and he was just standing on his porch smoking a cigarette. Maybe I've already said too much. But anyway, he was standing on his porch smoking a cigarette, and somebody drove by and hit him in the forehead with a paintball, like shot him in the forehead with a paintball.
Wow.
At least that's the story he told, he had a huge welt on his forehead, insane. So does that sound like a true story to you? Is that possible that you would get a huge welt? If it hits your skin, is it extremely painful?
Yeah, I would say in that story, first, my heart goes out to him. That is a very unfortunate criminal misuse and abuse of our equipment. And sadly, that does happen very rarely, but when it does, it makes outsourced, waves in the media and in the news and whatnot. I'd love to kind of double back on that idea here in a moment, is the idea of people being first exposed to paintball through unfortunate events like criminal misuse of equipment and really bad accidents. It's how a lot of people first hear about paintball. And one of the things that I wanted to counter in my job as a journalist. But to your question first, the bruise that he had on his forehead, kind of getting large and gnarly looking, those happen when you get hit in, the rest of your body. When we play the sport, we of course have goggles that cover eye, ears, nose, and throat, do a really good job of covering the sensitive parts of your head. And we generally wear long clothing, either camouflage or bright colored like motocross racing jerseys that have been modified to paintball use. So the welts that you get aren't too terribly bad, but if you get hit up close, it can definitely leave a mark. It usually doesn't feel any worse than getting stung with a wet towel. Like if you're in a locker room screwing around, somebody whacks you with a towel, that's about what it feels like. But the marks can linger for a couple days and get some really cool looking bruises out of it that don't hurt, but they look really weird.
Well, he definitely, when I saw his forehead, I was like, is that a pimple gone wrong, or is he telling the truth? Anyway,
I was sitting in an English class in high school, and I actually got called out by one of my teachers who thought that my neck was covered in hickeys, and she was attempting to publicly humiliate me for it. I'm like, no, I've just been playing paintball all weekend, and apparently badly because I shot a lot.
In the neck, too. That doesn't sound good. Ooh.
Yeah, that's a particularly bad spot to get hit. Oh, well.
So you're just playing as a kid, and then did you invent this idea of a paintball journalist, or were there other ones in existence when you started doing it?
Yeah, they had existed already by that point, and actually, a lot of my friends were reading comic books and other really cool printed materials that, regular kids read in the 90s. I was salivating over paintball magazines. There were a good number of them out in the industry already. They were staffed by writers who didn't generally make it their full-time job, but often people who would go and promote events and put on events or just travel widely for some related business, and then would play a lot of paintball and write about it. So there are titles like Action Pursuit Games and Faceful Magazine. There's Paintball 2 Extremes and a bunch of others that sadly none of those are still in print to my knowledge. But as a teenager, I got really interested in reading those magazines after I discovered the sport. And I thought, it'd be kind of fun if I got to write for these someday, but never really gave it a serious thought. Then, as it happens with a lot of hobbies and whatnot, I found that my interest in the sport far outpaced my ability to pay for it. So I needed some way to come up with money to keep going. And I mowed yards and I sold paintball equipment on the side to my friends and whatnot. And what really finally took in a big way for me was getting a job at my local newspaper. And the pay was absolutely terrible. But I had all of this really cool freedom to develop my own articles and my own ideas because I was a stringer, which means I didn't have health care. I didn't have a 401k. I was just a kid that they didn't reliably turn away. And occasionally they'd take some ideas that I pitched them. And I started small with little old ladies' cookie recipes and what's happening at local churches and bingo halls and that kind of, back page filler material. But after I developed enough clips, I thought, my big plan is coming close to fruition, because I had in mind that I wanted to write about paintball for my local newspaper. This was back when the local newspaper, first off, still existed in small towns like mine. Mm-hmm. And second off was, our primary means of getting news. And I knew that when I talked to friends, parents, and other people in the community about paintball, the first thing that would come to mind were stories like you just told me about your friend Dave, about, this one guy who had a window shot out with the paintball, or, they always see paintball, those damn kids kind of shaking their fists to the sky. And I thought, what if I could tell them the rest of the story about paintball? What if I could expose people to what this niche sport really is all about and counter some unfortunate information with some true and really celebratory insider type information? Because like with a lot of other niche interests, those who are into it really get into it and they know a lot about it. But those outside of that community, there's just this huge disconnect. I've seen that in sci-fi fandoms and whatnot, where some of my friends get really into the culture and the fandom and all, and other people just shake their heads and they're like, "What are you doing Saturday dressed like that?" I felt that same way in paintball. I'd be like, I'm going to go out and do this big sci-fi paintball event. William Shatner is going to fly in on a powered parachute. It's going to be tanks. People are like, whoa, what are you talking about?
Wait, William Shatner was at one of these events?
Yeah, it was called the Splat Attack. It was an acronym for something that I've long since forgotten. But he was promoting his Ahead with Horses charity, which seemed to be a neat charity where he uses horses in some kind of therapeutic capacity to help kids get over, I think, physical disabilities, handicaps, bad injuries, that kind of thing, helping get them some kind of a really cool accomplishment and get them involved in horses, because there's a really neat therapy angle to working with animals in general.
Right.
So he was raising awareness and money for that. I mean, that much I remember from years ago. Yeah. So he lent his likeness and his personage to this big paintball event. And so they cast it, this is up in Joliet, Illinois, they cast it as the Klingons versus the Federation versus the Borg. And you could sign up to fight for any one of these teams, and your entry fee got you a special custom jersey that looked like a Klingon uniform or Starfleet Academy or whatnot. And for the opening of it, they actually had William Shatner, Captain Kirk himself in his 60s, I think at the time, strapped to a powered parachute, which is this giant bayou boat fan in a backpack underneath the parachute. So you're skydiving, but with a lot of forward momentum. And he flew into the event and landed in the field next to the action there. And I ran over. I was the first journalist on the scene as his bodyguard entourage was landing around him. It was so surreal. And I bent over while he was still sitting on the ground and shook his hand and said, "Welcome to Splat Attack, sir," because it was like the least awkward thing that I could think to say in the moment. And he just stared at me like, "Are you going to help me get up or what?" I'm like, "Oh." And then I helped William Shatner stand with this giant fan on his back. And then he wandered off into the woods to go shoot at kids. It was great.
You said that was in Illinois. So yeah, you told me this
Yeah,
before, but you've traveled all over, I guess, doing that.
I have. I have. Yeah, I was living in Southern Illinois, I think at the time, maybe mid-Missouri, but I'm a Midwest kid, so I grew up in the greater St. Louis area. But I was able to travel with paintball all the way up to, this really random, obscure tournament in Maine, down to the professional leagues in San Diego. I went to NPPL San Diego, it's the National Professional Paintball League, back when that existed. So I've covered paintball from San Diego up to Maine, and I've been to the UK, Thailand, Malaysia, Borneo, which is still Malaysia, the part that Borneo that I went to, but it's cool because I get to say I've been to Borneo for paintball. Covered paintball in Moscow, Russia. Done a
What?
lot of really neat places with it.
Is it Americans playing paintball there, or is it Russians playing paintball in Russia?
Primarily Russians. They do get some Americans flying over. They get a lot more from Eastern Europe, though.
Hmm.
Paintball over there, when I saw paintball, there was this amazing opportunity to use a common denominator to look at two very different cultures. Because I've been steeped in the American paintball tradition, I know all about our approach to it and whatnot. But I went over there and I saw their approach, and they've got the same paintball markers, they've got the same goggles, they've got basically the same rules. But the mindset that they brought to the game was just distinctly Russian. And I felt very out of place as an American looking at what should have been really familiar and was on a mechanical level. But seeing the direction they took, it was really eye-opening.
Is it because they had a bunch of targets that looked like Americans that they were shooting at, or what?
It was mainly because they were shooting actual fireworks at each other.
Oh my God.
Yeah, they don't have the same kind of civil liability lawsuits as we do in America. So you're like, fire rockets at each other. Why not? So понимается по-русски. Sorry, that's the only Russian I know.
No, that's cool. So what year, I'm sorry to stick on the Russian thing. I'm just curious, like what year
Yeah.
you were over there and what was your experience like? Just briefly, I'm curious.
Yeah, that was 2007. It was in the middle of research for one of my books. But if I was able to work in a paintball angle, then that made a portion of the trip a tax deduction.
Hmm.
So I did that while I was there, paid a little bit of rent. So that was pretty cool.
Hmm.
And at one point, they sent some guys to pick me up from my hostel and put a hood over my head and drove me to some random part of Moscow, which sounds way more cloak and dagger than what it was. Just really weird. But they rocked me up to this facility that's just a big automotive repair looking place with big garage doors. And they take me inside, and there are all of these paintball tanks that are, of course, designed to look like Tiger tanks and all of these foreign tanks. Not a U.S. Sherman pattern to be found anywhere. I'm like, oh, this is pretty neat. And they're like, yes, our owner takes this very seriously. Yeah, this is like the middle of a workday, and you have people just crawling all over these things, welding things and tightening bolts. And is this your actual job? Because it blew my mind that there would be actual adults on an actual workday putting in actual billable hours en masse building paintball tanks. But sure enough, there they were.
And you're talking about physical, like tanks, like army tanks, like with, yeah?
Yeah. They'd start with four-wheel drive vehicle bodies, but then they'd strip away most of what we would recognize as the truck or the van or whatnot, and then fabricate their own sides and put on sometimes actual treads, usually just mock-ups of treads that go over the wheels, so you got to look closely to see the tires. But they would get as close to a one-to-one reproduction of some of the smaller tanks as they could get, or like a two-thirds reproduction of some of the larger ones. They'd build compressed air-powered cannons into the turrets. So you'd have a turret that actually spins and shoots a big cannon with a mighty whoomph, a big cloud of paintballs comes out. Or
So this
they'd
is all
actually
to play paintball? They're doing all this?
This is grown men with a lot of time and a lot of money who really have a cool passion for this offbeat sport. And I got to be a fly in the wall. My cost of participation was nothing. I got paid for my articles. That world was just being a paintball journalist. I never would have seen this any other way. I don't know if people would have really believed me had I not been able to show them selfies that I took and be like, hey, here I am.
Do you still have those pictures, or did you save any of these old paintball magazines?
Yeah, I've got a clip file that's probably 2 feet thick. I was very prolific because rent was very expensive where I lived. I had to publish a lot.
Yeah, well,
Yeah, I can send you a picture or two from my glory days in paintball if you want.
yeah, that'd be great. And share them with people. I think that's cool.
There
And
you go.
the in the interview, it was in February 2010, and at the
Hmm.
time, um, it said that that was how you made the vast majority of your income in 2010. So
Hmm.
that was 7 years ago. Has
Yeah.
Yeah, what's is that still the case?
No, unfortunately, paintball has gone economically quiet for a number of reasons that have more to do with the mechanics of the devices and the market than really anything else. So I have been paying the rent with various other gigs, including editing magazines and writing outside of the paintball industry.
Hmm.
Been having a lot of fun with that and trying to make my bones as an author as well.
What kind of stuff have you been writing?
Narrative nonfiction. So I wrote a book about that trip that included all adventure.
Oops, I'm
Wrote a
sorry,
book.
it cut out. Can you just say that part again? You wrote a
Yeah,
book?
yeah. I wrote a book called Following Josh, which includes a bit about that Moscow paintball adventure.
Mhm.
It's the story of me going to Asia in 2007 and riding the Trans-Mongolian and Trans-Siberian railroads from Beijing all the way into Europe, which I did because it was kind of that time in a person's life where you can do such things. I was moving out of New Hampshire. I'd just finished my grad school. I was newly engaged, moving into New York City to begin my life as a writer in New York, and had all the lights of the city twinkling in my eye. But also had a couple weeks to kill, and a buddy of mine was coming back from Asia after having taught over there, and said, "Hey, I'm coming back to the States, but it seems anticlimactic to just fly home, and just like land and say, 'Here I am.'" I
Hmm.
said, "Yeah, that seems kind of anticlimactic." He goes, "So I've got this crazy idea. I'm going to fly from Seoul to Beijing and then just hop on a train and take it up to Irkutsk and then go west until I run out of money." And I said, "Wow, that sounds impossibly romantic, dude." He says, "Yeah, you want to come? How can you say no to that?"
Wow. How long did that trip take you?
That was a little bit over 10 weeks, I think.
10
So,
weeks. Wow.
yeah, I sold everything that didn't fit into my fiance's studio apartment in New York. She drove me to LaGuardia, and that was it. I saw her about 2.5, 3 months later.
And you're married to her now, right? So it all worked out.
Absolutely. It all worked out great. We have kids now, and I can barely be gone 10 hours, much less 10 weeks.
Yeah, I know that feeling. So tell me about some of the publications you've made fail.
Yeah, more recently, I was able to parlay my writing in the paintball industry to writing for the firearms industry, which is not as related as what I would have initially thought.
Yeah,
Once I
you
was
would think
able
those
to,
would be. Would you
yeah,
people who play paintball aren't necessarily people who have experience with guns? Or would you say that when people play paintball, they mostly know how to use guns already? Or I don't know if you even have a feel for that.
yeah, it's kind of a mixed bag. A lot of the folks who have been target shooters and hunters for all of their lives, and I'd say 30s and above, a 30-year-old and older, they don't really have any interest in paintball, or some of them are vocally anti-paintball because they've been steeped in the safety aspect of it, as rightly they should be, where you never point any projectile launching device at another human being outside of very narrow circumstances involving combat and the defense of your life. And so the idea of pointing even at a compressed air powered spherical gelatin capsule linear accelerator, which is the fancy name for a paintball gun, the idea of even pointing a paintball gun at just anathema to them. So they have no interest in it. Then there are the younger folks who, in my suburban upbringing, were generally not around firearms very much. They might have had, BB guns or gone shooting with their uncle or their dad at one point. But a lot of the kids that I played paintball with growing up never really been exposed to actual powder burning firearms. So there was a bit of a disconnect there. And of course, there's a lot of carryover. Some people get out of the military and want to have that kind of camaraderie and that rough and tumble, get out and get dirty that they used to have. So they'll go play paintball and apply some of their skills. And sometimes hunters will get into it because it just seems like a fun thing. But I was shocked that there wasn't more of that crossover than what there was. And that point really came home when I was trying to sell my paintball book at a gun show. I had written a paintball book called 501 Paintball Tips, Tricks, and Tactics. And I thought, what a natural to bridge the shooting paintball community. I'm going to go to this gun show and buy a table for like $25 and put out my books put out some paintball masks, maybe do a little bit of diplomacy and all, and hopefully sell a bunch of copies. Maybe not to paintball players, but everybody knows a paintball player. If you think hard enough about who you know, somebody knows a paintball player. They can buy a book. And I didn't end up selling a single book that entire day. I got chewed out by a couple old codgers who just told me the paintball is the worst thing in the world because it's training kids to be unsafe with guns. Mm-hmm. And at the end, I left kind of heartbroken, just with this idea reinforced that there's really a chasm between the firearms shooting world and the paintball sport world. And yeah, so then go on, by all means.
No, please go ahead. I was going to ask you sort of just about writing for paintball versus a gun magazine and just to talk about it. So please go ahead.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, so how I bridged the kind of cultural gap between those two was that the magazine syndicate that owned the paintball magazine I wrote for the most, Action Pursuit Games, also owns a slew of firearms magazines. Some of the few magazines that reliably turn a profit on the newsstand nowadays are car and truck magazines, firearm magazines, and some of the diet and lifestyle magazines. The rest of the titles are really struggling, according to what I've been told by various industry folks. So I thought, okay, cool. The gun magazines are going to be around longer than the paintball magazines because there aren't that many paintball magazines at the time, and I saw more and more of them going out of business. So I talked to the editors there that worked on different titles and said, hey, can you help me get a little exposure at these other publications? And a few of them had been familiar with my work for years and years in Action Pursuit Games and said, well, what do you know about real firearms? So, well, that's how I got interested in paintball in the first place. Give me an assignment. Let me just kind of prove my worth and prove my mettle. And it took a while to get one of the actual individual title editors interested because they thought, paintball kid, what's he know? And so finally, the assignment that they gave me, as memory serves, was a roundup of safety classes. That was the give him something terminally boring to write about and maybe he'll go away assignment. And I saw them like, okay, is there anything more boring that I could possibly be writing about? I mean, you're putting sleek, sexy, multi-$1,000 rifles on the cover of your magazine, and I'm writing page 90 content on glasses. Opportunity. And I was thankful for the opportunity. So I did a bunch of research in glasses and talked to a bunch of manufacturers, and I put together what they wanted me to write about. And I was looking for an angle, kind of an in, something that made me care about it. I was having all these flashbacks to undergrad and college and high school when we were assigned these papers about things that are just terminally boring and you couldn't possibly care less about. You got to find that little starting point, something that gets you excited. And for this really dry bit on shooting glasses, I found that one company advertised that they met this U.S. military requirement of being able to stop a 17 grain, 22 caliber hardened steel projectile at 1,100 feet per second. And the specificity of that has stuck with me. 22 caliber, 17 grain, 1,100 feet per second. I'm kind of a details nerd as it is, but this was just like crack to me. I mean, I dug into that. I'm like, why this? Who cares? What can I learn from this? And I did some research and found out at the time that was a standard for ballistic glasses to be able to stop shrapnel coming off of an improvised explosive device. And if the glasses met that standard, then they could be sold to the military with government funds going to purchase those. So if you wanted to sell to the military and get military contracts, you had to meet that standard and a slew of other standards.
Yeah.
And I thought, well, man, what a sad world do we live in where we have to have standards for stopping pieces of metal flying off of a bomb designed solely to kill people. It's really sad.
Did you put that in the article?
I didn't. There was no way to work that in editorially. But then as I was sitting with that idea, I'm like, and also it's kind of interesting that we have scientists that work on this particular problem. And it's kind of interesting that there is this specific problem in the world that has been addressed. And here's the engineering that allows it to be addressed. And how it also applies to windshield technology and motocross helmet, eye protection technology, and eye technology across a lot of other disciplines too, all benefits from the same research. is going to be the way that I dig into this article and start to care. I found a detail, I'm going to geek out, I'm going to see who else pays attention to the standard, and if not, why not? And so that was kind of what became interesting to me in an otherwise terminally boring assignment.
So you wowed them with your glasses article. And then...
I must have. They kept me around.
So, and I guess I could say I have never read a gun magazine. I've never even picked one up to just even leaf through it. So what kind of stuff is in a gun magazine?
All different kinds of content for all different kinds of markets. Generally, the ones that you find on the newsstand are broken down into hunting magazines. So things that are oriented towards someone going afield. And the content there will be kind of parsed out for what's going to be in season just about a month after that magazine hits the stands. So if it's deer season, you're going to start seeing coverage of firearms deer season in August. Archery, you're going to see coverage of that in July. If it's one of the other bird species, you're going to see that on the cover of those coming out a month or so before that bird species is widely huntable in the U.S. You have more sporting-oriented magazines. You're like, oh, hey, this is a pistol for defense, a pistol for competition. Here's a rifle for competition. Then you have this slew of what we call, somewhat disparagingly, tactical. It's tactical magazines for people who like stuff that looks cool and want people who want to look cool while they're shooting it. So you see a lot of that out there too that have a little bit of lifestyle kind of angle and edginess to it, and a whole lot of just mechanical content. And they'll take gear and say, this is how it works. They're going to put it through field test and say, this is what it's capable of in terms of velocity and cyclic rate and reliability. These are all the specs. And they'll break it down kind of like car interest magazines will break down engines and look at torque and gear ratios and horsepower and get really into the nitty gritty that you probably wouldn't care about, but if you do, awesome.
So I kind of want to go back. Well, I'll just be honest, like talking about guns makes me a little uncomfortable, but I do appreciate that. Like, I do like that. I'm sure you've had just your fair share of misinformation and sort of people flipping out for various reasons. I don't know. You just seem very even-keeled about it, and you do a good job explaining. I don't know. What do you think of the whole thing? What did you think of being a gun journalist?
I was going to say, I think of myself as a very even-keeled and very handsome gentleman. And my humility goes on for days.
Yeah, I could tell.
Yeah, well, I live in Portland, Maine, which is not exactly known for being a bastion of pro-gun, shall we say. A lot of my friends are politically opposed to me in that particular way. Some of my friends aren't. So I do what advocacy I can in the form of just presenting my interests and my hobbies and why I like to go target shooting. I do a lot of competitive shooting. So I gladly talk about why I love to geek out on target shooting and competition shooting, and how that's been a sport that has always been there for me in life in really cool ways and brought me some really amazing friends. And I love the community that I've discovered through paintball and also through three-gun competitions, USPSA, IDPA competitions. There's a lot of really cool gun games that I play in sanctioned tournaments, and I've met a lot of wonderful people there. So I like the opportunity to say, hey, there are some really neat people out there playing some very interesting games that have nothing to do with the tragic events that we see in the news, nothing to do with the terrible, terrible way that we see firearms depicted in the movies and in popular culture. I mean, to competitive shooters like myself, firearms are a tool, like a golf club or a hockey stick. They don't really come with lots of identity or like politics or anything like that.
Yeah, I could see target
sexualized ways. Yeah.
Oh, it's just
go on.
Like, well, two things. One, like I can see there's something gratifying about being able to, I don't know, shoot a can off of a rock or something, like being able to aim at something and to hit a target. So I could totally see that as being enjoyable, or at least for me personally, that's all I could say. And then when I was a kid, my brothers, so I have two older brothers, and my grandpa, I guess, had it's not a shotgun, but well, maybe it is. It's that an air rifle. You pump it,
Okay.
right? You
Hmm.
pump it. So my brothers, we used to shoot it in the backyard a little bit, but my biggest memory is that my brothers took one of my dolls and they filled it full of ketchup. It was like a baby doll. You could
Oh,
had an inside. They filled it full of ketchup and they nailed it to the tree in the backyard. And then they shot at it with the air rifle. And I was like, okay, that's the end of the air rifle for me.
wow.
Yeah, that was good times. Anyway,
If I could give you if I could give you a little karmic balancing for that story,
uh-huh.
which just really kind of tears at my heartstrings in ways I should probably not admit as a gung-ho male. But so I was out at one of my testing facilities one day, and I had the range to myself. It was great. I saw about 100 yards down range, there's something white and fluffy that really didn't seem to belong there. And so I wandered down to see what it was, and it was an adorable little stuffed puppy dog. And it had a couple stitches ripped in the back of it and some stuffing coming out of it. I kind of looked at that and thought, what sick son of a bitch shoots a stuffed animal? This is 100 yards away, so they had to have been using a rifle. Who in their right mind does that to a stuffed animal? And then I started getting on my emotional high horses. At that time, a new dad. Like, stuffed animals are what give my son comfort. I use it to model love and kindness. Blah, blah, blah. Who would do this to us? So I picked up the stuffed animal. I brought him back to my firing position, dusted him off, put my coat over the top so that no one would come and see me playing with the stuffed dog next to my rifle. And then I took him home with me. I sewed up the stitches on the back. I put him through the washing machine like 4 or 5 times to get all the lead, dust, and dirt off of him. And his name is Range Puppy, and he lives in my office right now. So I've got a soft spot for things like that. I'm really sorry to hear that was like your big intro to air guns.
Oh, no. It's,
An
you know.
unfortunate incident.
Oh, I got a million unfortunate incidents involving my brothers. It's no big deal. It's made me tougher. It's made me
Might make a good book
yeah.
with the right humor, with the right angle.
Yes. Yeah. So the funny things you told me in the email too, we kind of went back and forth, and you were talking about, I think you were talking about how every place you worked kind of went out of business. Or tell me about the end of some of these jobs. Like, am I right? Am I remembering this right?
Absolutely, yes. So I discovered the joy is writing for print publications just in time for most of them to die, which is terrible, like karmic timing on my part. I should have been born 30, 40 years ago. But I started writing for that hometown newspaper, had a lot of fun with it. A couple of years later, it went out of business. It's like, man, can't go home again. Wrote for Action Pursuit Games magazine right up until the end. I rode that one into the ground. Also, Paintball 2 Extremes, Faceful, Jungle, Paintball magazine, and a whole bunch of others. Paintball News, I remember their heartbreaking cover story, said something to the effect of, we'll be back after these messages, just taking a short break. We all kind of knew that it was the end, and it presaged the quieting of the industry. Man, I've loved writing for this publication. But it's kind of like, in the video games where your character's running across a bridge as it's crumbling behind you and you just have to keep going faster. You're going to fall into the lava. I mean, if lava is like poverty and lack of health insurance, there you go. It's an apt metaphor. And so I kept going, and the fire magazines are by and large still in business that I first wrote for. But then I went to a different syndicate that was based out of New York City called Harris Publications. And I was doing really fun things for them. I developed one title. I was talking about developing a couple more with them. And then at 4:55 p.m. on a Thursday, I got the email to clear out my desk and go home. The company was out of business. And I thought, well, how are you going to enforce that? I work out of my house in Maine. So I was really happy to be a freelancer at that point. But so that entire media empire sadly went away, taking a lot of good people's jobs with it. There are folks who work at the gun magazines. They did, I believe, the magazine Heavy, which is a lifestyle, I think, hip-hop magazine. They did a lot of other really cool publications, too. A lot of people out of work and kind of scrambling to put together what else they could.
Yeah.
So I've watched the small town newspapers go away. I've watched the niche industry publications shrink. I watched Harris crumble beneath me. And I'm thinking, man, I need to stop doing what I love and start working for some industry that I hate, so my karma will smite them.
Is that what you're doing now?
No, the tobacco companies won't get back to me, but I'm going to take them down next.
Nice. So, actually, so why did paintball kind of go away? It was really popular when I was growing up, kind of thing, or even I guess it was after. I can't really think. Maybe it was while I was in college or something. Anyway, what happened to it? You don't hear about it anymore.
Yeah, it was mentioned in a couple like teen rom-com movies. It was on ESPN for a while. It had a really cool following going. What happened to it was, and I'm going to try to keep it not that esoteric, but a really cool engineering problem relative to economics. So in the 90s, paintball guns were mechanically operated semi-automatics. It'll fire as fast as you can pull the trigger. Bam, 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 bam. Good to go. Then somebody thought, wait a minute, what if I take an electric solenoid and I use that in place of this part of the trigger assembly to trip the sear? So now instead of pulling a trigger, you're basically clicking a mouse. So you're pulling a trigger, but it only goes as deep as your computer mouse click. Mm-hmm. And then boom, a little electronic impulse fires a solenoid and that trips the sear and Bob's your uncle. Paintball gun goes off. So people, okay, this is pretty cool. I can shoot faster. And somebody else decided, hey, let's tinker with the computer chip that controls this and let's make them go fully automatic. So you hold the trigger down and bam, now it's shooting as fast as it can possibly go. Well, this is pretty cool. And all the time that this is happening, people have to buy brand new paintball guns to keep up with the latest and the greatest technology. So from the 1980s through the 1990s, you couldn't really use the same paintball gun for more than about 2-3 years at the most before there was something out there that was significantly better than yours. So you had to buy something new. So the companies were predicating their business model on everybody having to repurchase the most expensive parts of their equipment every 2 to 3 years. Then in the early 2000s, with the advent of this cool electronic technology and the ability to shoot fully auto and all these crazy firing modes, there's a mad scientist inventor, certifiable genius, and just a wonderful guy named Tom Kay, who developed a special valve that would fill faster than any other valve. And he developed a special paintball hopper that would actually put pressure on a stack of paintballs to go down in your chamber. So you're no longer limited by just as fast as gravity will pull them down into the chamber. So with a special valve, he could shoot over 30 paintballs per second. And this feed mechanism would mean that it would keep up with that. So you could see just this laser beam of paint coming out of it.
Jeez, at this point, you guys should just be shooting each other with fire hoses, right? I mean,
it was basically a fire hose, and I don't think he ever intended that for use in a game. That was more of those, what can we do, kind of, let's push the technology envelope. Mm-hmm. But other companies saw that and said, okay, we can get up to 18, 20, 22 balls per second. And the insurance companies said, whoa, time out, guys. This isn't safe for anybody. And a lot of the fields said, yeah, we don't want people getting scared away by getting hit, 6 or 7 times all at once. So the insurance companies, the field owners, a lot of the paintball marker manufacturers themselves said, okay, we need to come up with a way of throttling this. And they came up with an industry standard of, I believe, 15.6, maybe 15.2. It's been a few years, but a 15 point some paintballs per second as a maximum firing rate.
That's a lot. Said, okay, 15 a second? That's still a lot. Doesn't it seem like a lot? Is it just me?
It's both of us. I've been hit with 15 balls a second, and wow, that stings.
Yeah.
So a lot of fields said, okay, even this is too much.
Well, how fast can your finger go? How fast do you think your finger can shoot? Probably 1 a second, right?
I top out at about 8 or 9 paintballs a second. There are kids who can go up.
Okay.
Yeah. Oh, man, there's some kids who like pound Red Bulls and just go out there and just let fly with like 12, 13 a second.
Okay. Sorry. Keep going.
Yeah, no worries. So anyway, these fields decided, okay, we're going to throttle that back too in the name of safety and everybody having a good time, which was a great idea. And even the engineers who wanted to push the envelope all said, yeah, this is really necessary for the industry. We can do more, but we won't.
Yeah.
But now, why would you need to buy a new paintball gun every 3 years if the price keeps coming down on ones that all perform right at that glass ceiling?
Oh. Huh.
So the same paintball gun that you bought 5 years ago is still, it's a little bit heavier, a little bit clunkier, but they started marketing them as, it's like so much newer and lighter, and we save like half of an ounce.
How much does a paintball gun cost? Do you know?
At the top end of the market, $1,200, $1,300.
Oh my God. And
At the bottom,
yeah, go
yeah, at the
ahead.
bottom end of the market, you can get them used on eBay for like $50. You can get them
Okay.
new at Walmart for like 110, 150.
Do they look like real guns? Or are they like bright yellow or what do they look? What do they look like?
So there are two different worlds in paintball. One is the woods ball world, one's the speedball world. In the woods ball world, that's where you get people who are really intense sometimes on playing like the military simulation stuff or doing scaled reenactments of World War II or playing some kind of modern military theme. And there you get paintball markers that look kind of like real guns all the way up to ones that intentionally look, feel, and operate as much like a real firearm as possible.
Wow.
So someone who is not familiar with a real gun would look at that and be like, whoa,
Yeah.
that's a gun.
Wow.
In the other side of things, you have speedball, and that's played essentially on a soccer field surrounded by fishing net with a whole bunch of big inflatable obstacles.
Mm-hmm.
This is a gross simplification for people who've never heard of it before.
No, that sounds like right up my alley. I like giant inflatables.
Exactly. I mean, it's just like those parks where you see like kids go run around big inflatable things and bounce off of them and go flying through the air. So you get to play paintball with those, and there's no reason to be all camouflaged up. The sneaking around that you do is all geometric based rather than like camouflage, fooling the eye based. So there are people who wear basically modified motocross jerseys. Back in the 80s, there were a couple motocross companies, starting with JT, one of the big names, that came out with paintball jerseys. So you have wild, crazy colors and cool designs, and you get your team name on the front and your name big on the back with giant letters. Just like you're a professional athlete in football or baseball or whatnot. You can have your name, boom, right there on the back. So that was pretty cool.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of what name I would have on my jersey. I got to think about that.
Yeah.
I'm sorry to interrupt. I was just glancing down at your interview and I saw that you said you ate a paintball or you've eaten paintballs. Explain.
I did. I believe in my cause so much. I ate a paintball in front of the state legislature of Wisconsin.
What? Explain a little bit.
A number of years ago, the state legislature in Wisconsin got some bum advice from a Department of Natural Resources person up there who was trying to pass some legislation banning the playing of paintball on all state-owned land, which kind of sounds like a good idea at first if you don't know anything about paintball. That's one of those problems that I keep running up against in the firearms world and the paintball world. Anytime that I really get into a niche sport or realm that's not understood by the mainstream. So we got a realm of this, or got wind of this, and thought, okay, we need to go up and check more into this. And there was a hearing on the floor of the state legislature where they were proposing legislation that would ban the use or possession of paintball equipment on all publicly owned lands in the state of Wisconsin, under the assumption that paintballs were oil-based, which they had not been since the early 90s, late 80s, actually since about the mid 80s, honestly. That those oil-based paintballs, which were not oil-based, would kill cows, would harm the dairy-making capabilities of cows that were somehow not magically killed by the paintballs that were not actually oil-based, and would create all kinds of other permanent, irrevocable environmental havoc, which isn't really the case. But is the case if you're someone who either doesn't understand paintball or don't understand paintball, and for whatever reasons of personal advancement, you want to get your name on some piece of legislation passed by other people who also don't know what's going on. So whatever the case may have been on their end, either good intentions gone awry or bad intentions gone further awry,
Well,
we didn't know, but we knew that we had to stop it.
I have to say, to be fair, though, like if young kids are running through the woods with guns that look like guns, but they're just goofing around playing paintball, I guess, yeah. I mean, there's no harm in that. Yeah. I don't know. I mean, I'm trying to think like why you would want to outlaw it. Like as someone with kids, I'm like, oh, guns, I'm scared.
Exactly.
Kids.
You can make maybe a public safety argument that kids running around carrying things that look like guns is really dangerous in this day and age. But that was in the 90s, so a little bit different culture.
Plus hunters. Aren't there hunters out there that the hunters could shoot them, or they could get shot by hunters? I don't know. Well, anyway, I don't know anything about it.
Yeah. So deer season doesn't really roll around until Wisconsin. I think it's November. And it's a little bit too cold in November to be playing paintball. So that's a midsummer when there's nobody else out there anyway.
Okay, I'm sorry. Back to eating the
Yeah. No worries. Anyway, so there's some bum legislation that would seem to be predicated on bum information, and it needed to be stopped. So a couple other industry figures and I got together. We carpooled up to Wisconsin. We went there and presented our case to the state legislature, and it was led off by a wonderful woman named Jessica Sparks, who is an industry expert. She's a court expert witness for anything involving paintball. She had written thousands of articles, was my editor at the time. So here is someone who really knows what she's talking about and has some clout. And the second speech was given by a man by the name of Dan Reeves, who had basically all the same background, and he was also an attorney, as was Jessica. So he spoke second, and they scheduled me, just by luck of the draw, to speak third. So here are two internationally renowned experts who know everything that there is to know about paintball, who have just completely eviscerated this law. And then I rock up there, and I think I was maybe 19, 20 years old at the time. And I click on my mic and I stare at all of these representatives in their fancy suits and their whatnot. They're looking down at me from their fancy mahogany desks like, hi, I'm Dave Norman, and I can't say any of that better, but in case you don't believe us that these are really non-toxic and won't hurt anybody, we're going to put our money where our mouths are, and down the hatch. And I ate a paintball. And the looks on their faces as I chomped it and like slurped a little bit of the bright orange goo out between my lips just to prove I was actually eating the paintball. The looks on their faces were amazing. I was so glad that I didn't vomit right there on my shoes.
So tell me what's in a paintball and what it tastes like.
So the shell is basically the same gelatin as encapsulates a lot of your pills, except it's not food grade because there's no reason to make it food grade. Mm-hmm. But it's the same sort of gelatin that goes around your pills. The inside is a combination of cornstarch, industrial grade food coloring that's, again, not necessarily food grade, but is biodegradable and totally environmentally safe, and various other filling agents, and sometimes a little bit of zinc powder, I think, just to make the fill a little bit brighter. Mm-hmm. But they're totally non-toxic, and they're made out of essentially cheap filler ingredients that are used in food, just not refined to the point of being food grade.
And you knew that? Did you knew you wouldn't get sick by eating that, or you just figured it was probably okay?
I knew that I'd be totally fine. I've been playing paintball long enough. I'd been in the industry long enough. That's one of those things that you kind of learn when you get into paintball, which I encourage you to check out someday. Yeah. Once you get in it just a little bit, people are like, oh yeah, there's not been paint in a paintball decades. These are totally fine. And people get shot into the mouth, grill, and their goggles all the time. So you just get a spray of paint that goes harmlessly in your mouth, and you have this terrible taste in your mouth, but nothing worse. So
I could see, it's interesting. Every time I interview somebody, I do think I'd like to try. Like, I do think I'd like to try paintball. I think I'd be into it. I get competitive like that. I could see myself sort of.
Wait. Yeah, it could be really. Now, do you do yoga?
I go in phases. I've done it, but there's a place a block from me, so I really have no excuse for not going, except that they turn the heat so high, and the place stinks like sweat. Yeah.
Oh.
And I like all pizza and beer. All the worst parts of a gym locker
room.
Yeah. I said to my husband one time, I said, when I look back on my life, am I going to want to have said, like, I was so fit and buff and in shape and everything, or am I going to want to say, like, I really enjoyed pizza and beer? And he said, I think you've already made that decision. I'm like, thanks a lot. So anyway, sorry. Exactly. Sometimes I do yoga, but not too much lately.
Awesome. Do you ever mess around with meditation?
Yes, I have. Yes. I took a class called Mindfulness-Based Stress Reduction, and
exciting.
It was incredible, actually. And after I took that 6-week class for like the next 2 months, that was the most chill I've ever been in my life. And I try to do it once. I still kind of do the breathing before I go to bed at night, but I have my little mat not mat, but like a cushion that I don't use that much, and I want to, and sometimes I do. Anyway, why do you ask?
Cool. So, well, the reasons that I ask is that if you ever get an opportunity to try just basic target practice before you try paintball, before you try anything else, go for it. And I want you to kind of think about the yoga and meditation and the breathing and the focus exercises that you've apparently done and try to apply that to shooting, because that's something that I find really cool. And I don't do much yoga outside of shooting, and I do a fair amount of meditation. But when I go out to the range, I use all of these really cool concentration and breathing and breath control and whatnot techniques, along with putting my body in awkward positions and holding them for a while trying to calm my mind, become totally focused on exactly what I'm doing at the moment. And I discovered this really cool kind of yogic, kind of meditative place when I'm target shooting. And all the problems of the world that I have just go away. And my whole world just becomes the target 100 yards away, the rifle in my hands, and the simple procedure of load, aim, breath control, fire, repeat.
Yeah.
And anytime that I get an intrusive thought, which, for meditation is all the time, I see that manifest in missing the target, sometimes embarrassingly. I see a little spurt of dirt kick up 6-7 feet away if it's really terrible. I'm like, oh man, why can't I just let go of this one thing for my day? But I have to if I want to actually hit my target. So back to the breath control, back to being in the moment, back to calming my heart rate, and just focusing on the simple, repetitive task at hand. And I found this really cool way of just spending time with myself in a meditative place with a rifle in my hand. Which might be surprising.
I can't believe, I can't even believe I'm relating to this in such a big way. I can't even believe I'm even considering it, but I can absolutely, that makes, there's times, it's so silly, but even like if I'm at a bar with and I'm playing pool or I'm darts or bowling or something, any time that you can just clear your mind of the thoughts and just sort of let them go a little bit and breathe, it is more enjoyable, even whether you do better or not. Even it's just so much more enjoyable. But at
the end of the day, it's just a competition against your own personal best anday.
And focus
competition.
And
and a competition for self-mastery.
I know you're sort of an aspiring author, so tell the people how they can find you if they're interested in stuff that you've written or in contacting you.
Check me out on Amazon. If you have any interest in New England or trains or things along those lines, I wrote the history of White River Junction, Vermont, by looking at the history of 4 really cool local folks and asking them the question, what makes a Vermonter?
Well, thank you so much. It was great talking to you. I'm sure we'll be in touch. I'll send you the file once I mess with it and everything, so you have a copy. And
edit out all of my stuttering and esoteric details.
You did not use the word a single time, as far as I could tell. So it's pretty great.
I'll have to link to that to my old boss at the radio, Mike Barrett, and say, hey, Mike, see your lessons. They paid off.
Completely. You didn't stutter at all. It was amazing. Anyway. Okay.
Well,
have a great night. Thank you again.
You too.
Okay. Bye.